As promised for the introverts, here's another key that I learned from comedy, and that is what people want from you. I've said it on this channel before. Growing up, I was super awkward. Like, I've had people turn around to me and say, like, you're making me nervous. And I'd be like, bro, like, I'm just being here. Like, I'm not even doing anything or saying anything. How am I making you nervous? Like, I didn't understand what people wanted from me in a conversation or interaction. And I remember moving school and, like, it confused me that people's friendship groups were so, like, vast and fluid and, like, inter, what do you call it? Like, intertwining and whatnot. But then they would have fun with people outside of their friendship groups. And that blew my mind. I'd be like, how the heck did they do that? I remember being in a chicken shop and people would argue about chicken. And it'd be so confusing because it'd be like they're having an argument, but they seem to be enjoying it. Why are they having the argument? Like, let's say one person had a piece of chicken and the other person takes the chicken. This sounds really ratchet right now, but the other person's got the chicken, the other person is like, hey, you took my chicken, now watch what I do. But they're both laughing about it. And I'd be like, maybe they try and get me involved. I'd be like, why am I getting involved in a fake argument? But it's not until like all these years later, I'm like, oh, they need to structure their time. And we structure time with each other because it reduces our anxieties. What people are looking from you in a given conversation, interaction, is for you to reduce their anxiety. And I'll give some examples as I go. But let's start with this. Let's look at sex therapy. Did you know a lot of times in sex therapy, they speak about a scale or a spectrum? On the one end, you got fantastic. This is where orgasm lives. This is what we all want. You know what's on the opposite end of orgasm? Anxiety. So to get to orgasm, you've got to do everything you can to reduce anxiety. Now let's go to comedy. I took up comedy in about 2022. And I did it to try and get better with people skills, to try and connect. And after all of that, I realized the hardest part about getting on stage and entertaining people is coming off stage and having to chat to them. People come up to me after the show and be like, oh, I really enjoyed it, blah, blah. And I'd be like, I have no pre-written material for this scenario. So, like, I don't know what to do with this. And I realized maybe taking up comedy was an avoidance way of trying to connect, because I'm up here and you're over there. And if you don't connect with it, then I can just disappear. But there is an aspect of comedy that's very much about connection and being present. And that's known as crowd work. So there's a great comedian who's doing, a lot of the content he puts out is his crowd work. He doesn't put out his pre-written jokes, he puts out just him interacting with the crowd. Why is that about connection? Well, in crowd work, what you've got to do is be willing to sit in the pocket of uncertainty. And you structure your time not with pre-written material, because there are actually times, and certain audiences who that doesn't work for. But the way you structure time is by being curious about the audience, and you make art out of what the audience gives you. So you might see a comedian be like, oh, what's your name? What do you do for a living? How long have you been together? And then what they're given, they make art out of it. And they might say something completely ridiculous, but they're showing the audience, I'm here with you. I've received what you've given me, and here's what I'm giving you back. And the audience will give them something back. Maybe they'll give them a laugh, a clap, maybe they'll shout something. And so they constantly building and creating something new, and they're enjoying each other's company, structuring the time. And I noticed on a smaller circuit, some comedians who were not necessarily that funny, in my opinion, did really well in those scenarios because they were willing to be present in that uncertainty. And the audience appreciated that. So when they told a joke that standalone wouldn't have been that funny, the relationship between them and the audience made it funny. That's why between two friends, you can have an inside joke that's not necessarily, maybe it's just a noise or a look, but their relationship gives it context to make it funny. It's that connection. They can structure their time with each other that way. So I digress. Now let's go back to the chicken shop scenario. One person has a chicken wing, the other person takes chicken wing, this is the most ratchet story I've ever told. Then they create an argument out of that. Argument turns into blah blah, and probably turn into something the next day, some kind of game. One person with the chicken wing has given the other person something. The other person's made something out of it. Other person has made something out of it. They're both acknowledging each other's existence and what each other's bringing to the structuring of the time. They're both reducing anxiety. So on that theme of reducing anxiety, let's look at what people want from you in terms of seduction. In the book The Art of Seduction, two things that he speaks about, among other things, is one, not being defensive. What does defensiveness do? Creates tension and anxiety. Two, someone who makes other people feel great about themselves. What does that do? Reduces their anxiety about themselves or the world around them. Let's take it to a dark place. Like many of you, I've got a family member who's very ill. And at this stage in their life, a lot of people who should have been there, just not there. They feel abandoned. Now, recently I went to a gathering where these old friends were. And they're speaking about family member, like, oh yeah, I ain't seen them for ages. It's really bad that they're ill, man. But, I haven't said anything because I don't know what to say. I haven't visited them because I don't know what I'd do if I see them in that condition. That's not how I remember them. And it's easy to be like, you scumbag, blah, blah. But they've got so much going through their mind that they don't know what to do. The easiest way of dealing with the uncertainty is by getting out there. And in comedy, I did the same thing, especially at the beginning where, let's say I forgot a joke and I've got to fill that space with something. I'll be like, that's my time, guys. I'm out. I'm meant to be up there for 5 minutes. I'm up there for 2 and I'm like, safe. Because I couldn't fill the space, so I just avoided that uncertainty by shutting it down. Another tangent. That's what people do with self-sabotage. But anyway, another way people try and fill that space of uncertainty is by trying to control it. That also doesn't work in comedy, where you're trying to force the audience to do something or feel something, or trying to gloss over, like ramble over it, over talk it. Sometimes you just need to address it. And what people do to this family member, people who didn't abandon them, maybe they just threw a religious verse at them or something blanket to try and make everything okay. You'll get better soon. You'll get healed. It's like, bro, this is a terminal illness. But that's their way of trying to manage that uncertainty. All that this family member wants is to know that they're not walking alone. All they want is for you to help reduce their anxiety by being willing to sit in that pocket of uncertainty. Now let's look at leadership. When you think of parents, when you think of teachers, governments, coaches, they seem to need this image of being unbreakable and unshakable. Why? Because when you look at them, that's supposed to reduce your anxiety. So when people are interacting with you, what do you think it is that they're looking for? They're looking for you to reduce some level of anxiety. And I could take it a million places, job interviews. And I want to say this, for people who are not very socially motivated, or maybe, you're more withdrawn, it's okay for you to look for other people to reduce your anxiety too. That's what we're supposed to look for from each other. The last thing I'll take it to is the last two things is in relationships. A lot of times, you see it a lot of men particularly, one person seems to be the fixer, trying to fix everything, but the other person just wants them to be present. I want you to acknowledge what I'm feeling. I want you to take what I'm giving you, not try and fix it or not try and withdraw from the conversation altogether, and make something out of it. I just want to know that you're here with me. And the last thing is, in therapy, a lot of therapists, especially new therapists, feel like they need to fill the space. There's a false assumption that a therapist needs to, have some magic wand and fix everything. But some things are not fixable, and sometimes all a person needs is for you to be present with them. You'd be surprised how much people don't have someone who's just willing to be present with them. Just to be there in that pocket of uncertainty is enough to reduce anxiety. So, in summarizing, big word, summarizing, not really, but in summarizing, people want you to reduce their anxiety. And that's not to say sometimes you just need to be there and be stoic and sit still and look. But looking at how you can reduce tension can help you to have much more fruitful conversations. Something else that popped into my mind, feel free to skip the video, is great comedians play with that. They build tension, build anxiety, break it. Build tension, build anxiety, break it. Build tension, build anxiety, break it. You know, from the minute this comedian walks out on stage, there's tension and anxiety because the person's like, oh, you know, I paid money, I brought my wife here, you know, is this person going to be able to deliver? Are we going to have a good time here or not? If a comedian's able to break that tension immediately, you've got a show.